betrayal trauma recovery, betraying spouse recovery, or addict recovery. Those two things are completely different than relational recovery. We do need a foundation in betrayal trauma and addiction recovery. And a lot of that is phase one of the recovery phase, essentially, for the coupleship. If one person isn't doing their work there, and this is including the betrayed spouse, phase two is going to be tough.
Hello, everybody. I am here with Tesa Saulmon. Tesa, I think we connected on Instagram. That's what it was. I saw a post that you had, and I just loved it. And it spoke to a bit about what we're going to talk about today, which is, I don't know, you call it, you call it something different. I always call it this kind of second phase after you and your partner have made it through the crisis, right? Like, all right, we're not falling apart. We've both got both feet in this, or at least most of both feet back in the relationship. And then what, right? And it is a total plateau. I know you see it. Everybody sees it, right? It's like, we make it through the crisis, and then it's like, crap. We have this very real problem in our relationship. Like now, what do we do, right? It's less about safety creation, trust recreation, check-ins, and now it's kind of migrating into something different. So Tesa, can you define the second phase for us before we dive in?
Yeah. And so to be clear, the phases that we're talking about are with the Raabsmith's model in the intimacy pyramid, and they have three key phases. And that's what I have found through everything that, I've learned with betrayal and infidelity is this one just fits right in all the areas. So the recovery phase, the restoration phase, and then the renewal phase. So what we're talking about today is the restoration phase, and it's about healing the wounds and rebuilding connection. The phase before that is just an utter shit show. Truly. We're rebuilding safety. We're in a crisis. You don't know up from down. And so this is where, okay, we're stabilized and we are committed for the most part, as long as we're both doing the work, right? Where are we going from here? And so the restoration phase is, I think, where everybody wants to start. And it's like especially the men, it's like, hey, let's get out of this crisis phase and just get into you being my wife again, right? Yeah. And it's like, no, we can't start there. But it's where everyone wants to start when they come and seek therapy, right?
And I would say too, it's definitely, and this might be a personal bias of mine, but it definitely seems like, and it's probably supply and demand as well, but it definitely seems like therapists, CSATs, the betrayed partner community, everyone like really wants to talk about that first phase, right? The crisis phase. And to our credit, the field's done a great job. I mean, we really have that. We've got that phase down pretty good. Like, hey, here's what you guys need to do. You're not going to like it. It's not going to be comfortable. It's going to look weird. And when we do it, we find the marriages survive better than when we take any other strategy. So, I really do. I'm really proud of the field and what we've done in that crisis phase. I feel we've done some really, really good work there. And then I really do find it kind of starts to become very murky, gray, ambiguous, poorly defined as you exit that first phase. And I strongly believe that. I think, what works for one couple does not work for another couple. Can you speak to that first? Like, why is that second phase just so, I think, kind of all over the place? It's like what I see some couple doing in their restoration phase is so different than another couple. And it does not work with them, and it worked for this other. Describe that. Why does it get so weird when we get out of this crisis and then all of a sudden it starts becoming, I don't know, looking more and more like the Wild West?
Yeah, I would refer back to phase one. I would say like they missed something there, and it's not a solid foundation, most likely. And so couples therapists, it's interesting, is they have the best eyes on what each person needs to be doing individually. And so we look at betrayal trauma recovery. We look at betraying spouse recovery or addict recovery. And then what people aren't realizing is those two things are completely different than relational recovery.
Sure.
Like relational recovery is, but we do need a foundation in betrayal trauma and addiction recovery. And a lot of that is phase one of the recovery phase, essentially, for the coupleship. And that if one person isn't doing their work there, and this is including the betrayed spouse, right, is phase two is going to be tough.
So let's talk about that. What are these? I know this, I mean, this is a whole podcast in itself, but give like if you can give a short overview. I know this is a loaded question and a huge question. You could probably like talk for probably 2 hours on this, but like, can you just give the audience and listeners just some ideas of what we mean by having all of your bases covered by phase one before phase two? So again, you don't have to get into the nitty gritty, but like what incomplete in phase one would really mess with your ability to effectively do phase two?
Okay. So for the addict, have you ever heard of the 4 recovery attitudes?
No.
And so it is basically abstinence.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay.
Stop the behavior. Yeah. Sobriety is I'm not having the urges on a daily basis. Serenity is I understand there is hope and freedom in recovery. And then 4 is humility. Humility. That's where men get stuck. Addicts get stuck, right? Where it's going to really impact phase two. And then for the betrayed spouse, I'm going to like ruffle feathers, but it's okay because this is truth, is entitlement. It's right because betrayal is injustice. We're not going to say that it's not. It truly is. And at the same time, there does come a point where the equality starts to come down here and we got to put in the same work. So how I like to phrase it is like, I always want the addict to outwork the betrayed spouse. And there's some resources that say, I want the addict to do 80% and I want the spouse to do 20. And it's like, I hear that, but I don't like the way that it takes away from the spouse's work. That's an unrealistic expectation, truly. When we are talking about restoration and reconciliation, I think the betrayed spouse needs 100% work and the betraying spouse needs 120%.
Yeah, ooh, I like that. There we go. Everybody hear that? I love that. 100% and 120, right? So both are bringing 100, and then us guys, we're bringing it with a little bit extra oomph to it. Now, I like that a lot. I think that's very well said. Very well said.
Yeah. And so I think that is so unrealistic expectations, the unfairness, there is so much unfairness in this, but the betrayed spouse needs humility too. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And so it's really going into their, going at their pace, because it's also like, if they're struggling with that, why are they struggling with it?
Can you define humility too, just for fun, so people like really know what that is?
That's a good question.
Because it's everybody you ask has a different definition, but I would just love to hear yours.
And so it is where I am doing something without the expectation of praise, gratitude, and this is for the greater good. I am lacking pride. I am lacking ego. So the main reason I wanted you to do that is I think I do see that as an issue on both sides, betrayed partners and addicted or compulsive men, in the sense that there are expectations. Hey, I did this and you should appreciate this. Hey, I'm doing this and this and this, and you don't get the right to say blank, right? So I think a lot of people feel like, oh, no, I have plenty of humility. And it's like, I think the way I always say it is, it's
I simplified even further. It's like what to the greater good piece. Yes. And how can we remove any sort of personal biases, any sort of like, rights, wrongs, goods, bads, betters, worse, right? All these labels, these hierarchies. I think humility is all right. Hierarchy in a hierarchy-less place, and we're just looking at two people, hurt people, people with their own traumas, right? Like objectively, just looking at the situation from two human beings who are just trying to do their best, right? And rather than projecting some sort of expectation onto the other person. So question on that though. So, how do we deal with that? Is that something that you think goes away if we've done really well in phase one? Do you think that humility happens, or do you think it's something that intentionally has to be called out, paid attention to? How do we, because I know everybody listening to this, probably the men are like, see, I told you she was being too mean to me. But I want to address that because, I will say at the 1 year mark, I do see men start to get a little irritated at how, it still never seems to be enough, right? So then there's this like, somebody tell her that I'm doing enough. Somebody put her on equal ground, right? There's this weird dynamic of what do we do with that? So how does this go away? If we did a good enough job in phase one, would you expect this to just go away on its own? Is this something that needs to be intentionally dealt with in phase two on both sides? Talk to us about, if people are feeling this lopsided relationship dynamic, how do we create that humility and kind of dyad again, I guess?
So I think it is the easiest way to put it is let's stop trying to manage the other person. Mm-hmm. Like take responsibility for ourselves because that's all we have control over. Yeah. If we try to manage the other person, we are trying to control something that we will never have control of. And you guys are going to drive each other nuts. Mm-hmm. And so if you focus on your emotion, your response to that emotion, and how that impacts your spouse, like underline how that impacts your spouse on either side, then that is how, and that's humility, right? Mm-hmm, how it impacts your spouse. Mm-hmm. And so I think it is something that's constant. I think it's a choice that we are choosing to bring in a relationship of this is how I want to be in the relationship.
Yeah, so I have a follow-up question to that. Do you feel like, so empathy, there is this, I don't know who started it, but basically there's this like, it's this buzzword that like, you'll never heal if your husband doesn't learn how. The gateway is empathy. It's like empathy is like this gateway to like the world that the betrayed partner wants. And I don't know where this started, but and maybe I'm because I'm bad at it, I was sensitive to that because I'm like, oh God, the gateway is this thing that's really hard for me. But I really do. Maybe it's my own personal bias, but I feel like that's said quite a bit that he needs to learn empathy, that is like this gateway to phase two. Right. So what would you say to that though? Because I also feel like that can sometimes add to this, I think you know what I'm saying, but it adds to this like, oh, well, we're stuck because he can't empathize. And I don't know. I feel like, we already have enough on our plate? Do we need to keep adding these these things to this already difficult situation? Because again, trust me, I think these guys are trying. It's just very hard for them to crawl in the hole. I don't even think they know what that means. Like they see all the images of crawling into the hole with her, but every time I try to do it, she tells me that I'm standing outside yelling down at her. Hey, how is it down there? Do you need anything? Can I get you some Gatorade or some Cheetos? And like, I think I'm down there with her, but she never feels like I am. So anyways, you get where I'm saying with this. Can you speak to that piece? Because I feel like sometimes that's a big piece of friction is there's, all these groups of women saying, we need this empathy, and somebody got some empathy and she's like, ooh, I want my husband to do that. Can you speak to that? Can you speak to that whole thing? Because, oh my gosh, I wanted to kill the empathetic guys out there because I'm like, can you stop making me look bad? I'm trying my face off over here, and my wife's hearing your little cute stories about the flowers you bought, and now you're making me look terrible. So can you speak to how to assess that accurately so that especially the guys and the betrayed partners can assess how to handle this? Because I do feel like it's like a hurdle that everyone's like waiting for me to jump over before we can proceed.
Yeah. Are you ready for a fire hose of information?
Yeah, I am ready. Just bring it on.
Fire hose of information right here. So I think the unfortunate thing is people think empathy is either you have it or you don't.
Correct.
And that's so untrue. You have empathy. And so does an addict that is in early recovery. It's different phases of empathy. Mm-hmm. And so it's not all or nothing. There's phase 1, which is effective empathy. And that's what an 18-month-old has. And that is, I see you smile, I can smile. Is I can mirror essentially what you're doing. And then second is cognitive empathy. That's like 2-year-old to 10-year-old is I see they're sad. And I want to ask them, why are they sad? Right. And so I'm getting curious and I can acknowledge their emotion. And then compassion. So phase 3 of empathy is compassionate empathy. And that is when I start feeling is like, oh, you're sad. I want to give you a hug. I want to hold your hand. I want to sit here with you because you're sad. And then phase 4 is applied empathy. And that's full throttle. That's what everybody has the expectation of. Everyone expects like their husband to have applied empathy. And that is where I not only can see, acknowledge, I feel, but I'm also hurting with you. Like that's an advanced skill. And if we have the expectation for our husbands to have that skill at the very beginning, like we're going to be very disappointed. Like we're so disappointed because they're probably in phase 2. Like they say, my wife is mad. My wife is sad.
Well, and I think the tough part was my wife would see me in our recovery groups sobbing for this other woman because I'm just like, oh, I'm so sad for her hearing this story. But when my wife does it, because I did the thing, oh my gosh, Tessa, it's so hard for me to stop feeling shameful, bad, guilty when she's describing it, because I know she wouldn't be feeling this way if I didn't do it. And so I'm just like, I'm lost in shame, really, as she's describing her hurt. And to this day, I cannot hear her describe how deep her hurt is without feeling extremely ashamed of what I've done. And so, which I hate because it completely blocks my ability to do what I would do for another woman.
Yeah, that sounds really frustrating.
It is. And I think here's the more frustrating piece about it is I think we as addicts trying to empathize are extremely frustrated because it makes us look like we can't or don't. And so I think it creates this huge complex. For me, it like made me want to stop trying because it's like, I care, you keep telling me that I don't, so screw you. I'm just not going to try anymore because it doesn't matter. So anyway, I just wanted to speak to that. We don't need to make the whole podcast about that, but I just wanted to speak to that as we're talking about these phases, because I do think both people need to. One thing I see with this is we're trying to have you, the experts, help us in our recovery. The problem is we take things very literally, right? When you say something, we don't, it's very black and white to the client. It's like, okay, he needs to do that. And then we go home and there's not a lot of like play or individuality, or I would even say grace too. Like, I mean, we had no empathy in my household. None, zero. No one did empathy ever. At all. And so I'm still for the first time now learning it as a full grown adult. And so I just wanted to bring that up because I think we need to remember that these are imperfect people who were raised by imperfect parents. And, I think it would be beneficial to have grace there if you're going to advance. I think as my wife started allowing things to be a little bit more gray and having some play in there was when we really started healing. It was when she was holding me to a benchmark that, oh my gosh, that phase was so frustrating. It's just like, I'm trying my hardest, but it never seemed to be good enough. So I just wanted to speak to that phase. So I know everyone's listening to this and they want to get into phase 2, and that's what this podcast was about.
Can I say 2 things?
Please do.
Yeah. So 2 things that I want to, I don't think they're educated on enough and I think this is helpful for the betrayed and for the betraying spouse, is really talking about the science behind what you just described. So number 1 is trauma organization. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that?
No, please explain.
So trauma organization, if we have experienced childhood trauma, we learn how to compartmentalize. And when we learn how to compartmentalize, we then blind ourselves to awareness of self, awareness of others, and reality. And so addicts struggle when they struggle with trauma organization is they're going to have limitations on their attunement and being able to see reality for what it is. And that is going to have a lot of impact on, am I able to, like the way that I see my wife's pain versus the way I see a stranger's pain. There's the connection or disconnection there. And then competence, relational competence. And so if we take the understanding, have you ever heard of the phases of competence?
No, well, I have, but I want you to re-explain them because I don't know if it's the same ones that you're talking about.
Okay. And so there is, let's see, you're going to test my memory. So unconscious incompetence, that is, we don't know what we don't know, right? So you described in my household, we never learned empathy. We had zero idea. We don't know what we don't know. So how can I expect you to know something that you don't even know exists? So that's 1. And then the second one is unconscious competence. Okay, I know I have a problem. I don't know what to do, but I can see that I lack empathy. I do not, function in the same way as Joe over here. And then 3 is conscious incompetence.
Yes.
Is now I know I have a problem. My therapist has taught me new skills and I am applying it and I am messy. I'm not good at this, but I'm trying. And then we have conscious competence where now it's like riding a bike or driving a car. It's like, this is just the way of being now.
I think that I love those stages because the way I understand recovery, that's what at least on the addict side of things, I think that is probably the best definition of what I have done in recovery was what the heck's even freaking going on? How did this happen? Why is my disclosure 14 pages? like how did that even occur? And then I'm head over heels with her. Everyone who knows me knows this, yet I acted like somebody who completely could care less about her. Right. And so I'm going through these understandings of how in the hell did this even happen? Okay. What don't I know? Then, okay, cool. What do I need to know to stop doing this? And I'm kind of just marching through and now, reaching a place where, I'm not perfect, but I have, when I do something, I say, before you and I started recording, I say like, I'm now at a point where if I've offended somebody, I will go to some people that I trust and say, hey, I'm curious. I did this thing. It offended somebody. I'd love to talk about it and figure out what it was that I did that was offensive. Right. So, I love that. I think that was such a brilliant, for all the guys listening to that, what a great definition of kind of what we're doing. Like, how do we understand life and ourselves and other people and society enough to the point where I can consciously practice this skill set in a very healthy way, acknowledging my existence and how it interacts with a bunch of other people. So well said. I think I've never correlated that pyramid to recovery, but it's actually a perfect analogy as you look at how guys are kind of marching through one day, long-term recovery being how is this my new life? Like integrity and honesty and ruthless, transparency. This is just the way I live now. I don't see value in lying. I don't know why someone would lie. What would I gain from that? Yeah. Brilliant. The description. I love that.
So combined all of those: empathy, trauma organization, and then relational competence. And then we're going to really see and understand why our husband is struggling.
What you just described is if you could like deconstruct grace, that was what you just described, right? Like that's what grace is. It's all of those pieces, understanding that people are all over the spectrum on there, and the person judging is probably if you're judging someone, you're probably on the spectrum of some of those, and you could use some work yourself. So I love that, and I just want to clarify too. Like I know, like my wife and I struggle with this just like every other couple, but I am so blessed. Like I will say this, one thing that she's done such a great job of is she has fought to have as much grace as possible the whole time, like constantly seeking to understand, is what I'm demanding of him unrealistic? And I'm so blessed that she did that, because it's definitely made things a lot easier to feel. I just appreciated her trying to make sure that she was correct before she put something on me or requested something. And I'm so thankful for that. All right. Phase 2, restoration. My gosh. So I wanted to do a little disclaimer before we head into this phase, because there might be some things said and we do not want you to weaponize or triangulate this information. What is weaponization or triangulation? This would be when you hear therapeutic, scientific, psychological information, and you use it against somebody rather than for the greater good, right? So Tessa and I are going to say some things. Now, keep in mind, what is this disclaimer? We're talking about a phase that I would say is actually quite hard to get to. I think, you and I talked about this before. I think a lot of couples think they crushed it in phase 1. And they want to jump into phase 2, and then they realize very quickly in phase 2 that they actually didn't do that great in phase 1. My wife and I realized this, and it's such a bummer too, because it's like, all right, I'm a year and a half in, we must be at like phase 4 by now. And we're like meeting with therapists, and like every single one is like, you are very much in phase 1. You are not ready for phase 2, and that can be hard to hear. That can be really hard, especially my population. There's a lot of like high achieving men. They typically have married high achieving women. And so, getting this conquered quickly is something they want to do, but you got to be careful with that. So the disclaimer is we are talking about phase 2. And I just want every couple to understand there is a pretty damn good chance that you actually might not be in phase 2 or be ready for phase 2. So, and again, I'm not saying that you aren't, I'm just saying, be careful and be curious to wonder, I guess be open to the idea that you might not be in phase 2 or be ready for phase 2. Just be open to that concept, and don't be offended when someone says, hey, there's still some core principles that we need to go back and clean up. So that all being said, if we say things, I do not want you to go and tell your husband or your wife, whoever is listening to this, hey, I heard Tessa and Roland say this and you suck at that. So you're the one holding back the relationship. That's not what we intended this podcast to do. This podcast was supposed to help you guys figure out, are you in phase 2? And if you are in phase 2 and it's not working, maybe you need to go back to phase 1. So anyways, listen to everything that we're saying, and be open to the fact that it may or may not apply to you. Go back to your couple's CSAT and bring this to them and have them help you decide. So Tessa, anything you want to say from a disclaimer standpoint? Because I do think we need to be careful. I think this area is dangerous. I see people really take steps back in their relationship through just stupid little fights and disagreements and blaming. So any kind of things that you want to say before we dive into phase 2, just to help couples make sure that they're listening to this in the right way?
I think you did a great job. I think just knowing that for the restoration phase, if we look at the injustice and kind of like how at the beginning in the recovery phase, we're looking at men sacrificing themselves a lot and women having entitlement, rightfully so, right? Is we're closing this gap. Mm-hmm. And so to remember that is what we are doing, mm-hmm. and we're moving towards that equality. And if that doesn't feel right for you, there's probably a reason. I don't know if it's you. I don't know if it's your spouse, but definitely go talk to your CSAT.
And would it be safe to say, I'm genuinely curious on how you would answer this. Wouldn't it be safe to say that therapists, healers, counselors, we would love, even in that first phase, to have that gap be as small as it needs to be for the couple to heal, that we wouldn't default to this total, she gets entitled to ask for everything that she wants and you get nothing. I'm just trying to, the reason we do that is that phase is messy as heck. And I personally believe if we didn't do that, my wife would have left me. She just would have. And I also would have been an a-hole. I just would have, I don't know. I would have pushed back. I would have tried to take an inch and take a mile. So I think we do that in that phase because we realize, oh my gosh, this phase needs nothing to go right. Even a little bit more to go wrong could blow this whole thing up. So I just wanted to ask you, just so couples understand, we do that because we're trying to help you to get back on stable ground. But I think all of us wish that we necessarily didn't even have to have it be as lopsided as sometimes we have to make it. So I say that just to say, if we could just go at it equal, wouldn't we try and do that? We just can't. Try it from personal experience. I'll tell you right now, that would have never worked if we were on equal playing field. So how do you respond to my assessment of that gap? Aren't we trying to keep it as small as we can to keep the couple on stable ground?
Yeah. And this is such a great question. So the betrayed spouse always thought there was equality.
Yes, they did. Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. If anything, they gave, in my community as high achieving men, if anything, they were sacrificing a lot. You were on work trips. You were on guys' golf trips in Ireland. there was times where she was raising 3 young kids, 2, 4, and 8 alone, so that you could, explore and enhance your career. So yes, they thought they were equal. And sometimes I would even say a lot of these partners, they actually were giving up quite a bit. And so I would say there actually was, I know the guy would probably disagree, but there was a little bit of a lopsided thing, because we live in a capitalist country. And so I think there's this, hey, I'll make some sacrifices so that our family can be in a better position. So I wanted to add to that. Yes, they thought it was equal. And if anything, they were giving us some trust and some flexibility that they didn't even get.
Yeah. And so we take that, what the wife's reality was at that time. And then the betraying spouse chose to take more. And so the chose to take more is because the deception and secrecy is it took away the betrayed spouse ability to make decisions by knowing their full reality.
Yes, correct.
And so would they have made the same decisions if they knew? We don't know. You took that away. And so with that power dynamic and them being unable to make choices for themselves, there is a switch, and it's temporary. We're not wanting this forever. Men do think they're oh man, this is forever. And they want to give up, right? And they're just she's always going to be here. And then just reminding yourself of, you didn't have a problem when it was flipped. When it was flipped, you had zero problem with that. And so now it's not about, she wants to, be talking down to you, but it's let's empower her. Let's show her how much you care and give her the rights and the power that has been taken away for her so she could feel safe. And as she feels safe, and that's in the recovery phase, we start getting this and we go down to the.
So would you say that phase 2, and I know this may not be documented or written, but so would you say then that phase 2 kind of starts when we're able to achieve that? When what's the milestone? What's the milestone, if there is one, of when do we know that we're stepping into restoration and kind of exiting recovery? Or I guess I wouldn't say exiting recovery, because I think you kind of inherit, I think you keep all the phases as you go forward. So when would you know that you add restoration to recovery? What's that milestone as a therapist? What are you looking for?
Oh, so many things. Some sobriety time. We need some sobriety time underneath your belt. A structured disclosure ideally.
Sure.
Like
I like that.
she needs to know the truth. Boundaries that are respected.
Ooh,
So
I like that.
so she has to know what she needs. So she needs to figure out her boundaries and then respecting. The biggest thing
and that would include conflict boundaries, because I think a lot of couples need to figure out how they're going to handle these really tough moments. And I think, for my wife and I think that started really keeping us stuck in phase one. Was we stopped in the beginning. We were communicating very respectfully, and then we kind of got pretty feisty, and it was a big setback. It really kind of pulled us out of, because what happened was she lost her safety. I lost mine too, because I felt like she was accusing me of shit all the time. And so I just want to talk about that. Is that also included in boundaries? Is like, are you guys communicating like healthy adults?
Yeah, you jumped ahead. So after boundaries, emotional regulation.
Okay.
Yeah, we need emotional regulation for both people, for them to be able to have boundaries and then have safety guards. Like we need to plan timeouts. Like we need when conflict comes out. So a lot of individual work, some couples work on just being able to communicate and not even have those tough conversations at the beginning. And I think that is the hardest part, because betrayed spouses, they want to talk about it, And then, I think what the most difficult part is sometimes is of course they want to talk about it with their husband, and they're wanting to feel heard and understood, and they don't have the skills. They have no idea what they're doing. And then it's
well, I don't know how to listen either, because she's saying shit to me that I'm like, oh man, this is way over my pay grade, right?
Yeah. And it's chronic disappointment.
Yep.
And it just is further and further detaches you. And so, couples, when I, see them, the hardest thing to say to them, but it's just the reality. The husbands love this. Wives don't. Is right now, we are not going to talk about the betrayal. We will eventually, but we can't right now. We can't address that. And the reason, let me be clear. This is after like disclosure. We're working towards
So crisis, damage control, right? We're like working towards like, do I even want to stay with this guy? Right. So we get through that. Okay, cool.
Yes. And the reason for that is we have to teach both of you guys skills. You need to stabilize your trauma, and he has to learn empathy, and he has to learn the communication. And so with that is kind of going into the restoration phase.
Yes. So define that. I have two questions that I want to ask that are kind of like important, I think, but I want you to first to define, like, for everybody, what is restoration? Like, what is this whole phase about? Because I think a lot of people think they're in it. They think they're past it. They think they're doing it well. Redefine it for us, please.
So this is the longest phase. It is the hardest phase. And I think that is because you're doing the deep grief work.
Yeah.
That it's hard. It sucks. A lot of childhood wounds come up that are, trying to uncover. I think the hardest part in this is being able to emotionally regulate. So what is restoration? It is,
if you had to briefly define it, like, I just want people to understand like what we're talking about.
Rebuilding connection.
Okay.
Is rebuilding connection. The dust has settled, right? And we are going to heal old wounds. And this is where we have more forgiveness talk. And this is where we build more relational skills, more importantly, overall. And I think this is what drew you to reach out to me.
Wow, that post was so good. I love that. I think that might be phase 3, that post. But anyways, I love that post so much.
So this is phase 2. The post is phase 2. And I think this is where even therapists miss the mark here. And this is, is vision. is what is our vision for this marriage? And so we are not looking at the betrayal right there. We're not looking at the pain that has been caused. What we're looking at is what are we working towards? What are we trying to build? What type of husband and father do I want to be? What type of wife and mother do I want to be? When I envision, if I were to look into a window and see my future, what do I want my family to look like? And what is that going to take?
It's but again, I know that it sounds very simple, you guys. So when Tessa posted this post, I think I reached out to you on it because it was so freaking true. I read it and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to pull it up right now just so that I can tell so the post, there was 4 boxes on her post. And for those of you who want to see it, it's Tessa's post. It's Talking with Tessa, Tesa, is her handle. And I love following you, by the way. You're such a great follow. You're really, I'll inflate your head in the intro to this podcast that I record separately. But I'm really, truly impressed with you. You're an impressive therapist. Very impressive. Seriously. So she had these 4 boxes and she says, what is our vision for this marriage? Are the conditions right for safe couples work, or do we need to start individually first? Which I love that, right? That's kind of question. That's like asking, like, are we in the renewal phase, or what's going on with this? And let me rephrase that too. I don't think it necessarily means you guys aren't in the renewal phase. I do think people, my wife and I were one of them. We were extremely traumatized, both of us, in very different ways, and so it was really hard for us to renew because we were both just dealing with so much of stuff that we had tried to get past and we thought we were over. And then this betrayal thing happens. The other 2 questions were, am I willing to commit to pursuing it even if my spouse isn't perfect yet? Which I freaking loved that one. I think that is such a great, and guys, I wouldn't want you, that question applies to you too. I'm sure guys read this and say, yeah, honey, are you willing if I'm not perfect? Like, guys, you need to consider this too, because a lot of the way she's treating you is from her own stuff. She watched Disney movies where this wasn't supposed to happen to her, right? She's, once a cheater, always a cheater. Like, guys, she's heard a lot of stuff that she's now trying to deal with and allow space to heal. So, you need to understand, she was raised in a world that said to leave guys like you. So her staying, like, you guys don't understand. So it's a really big ask. And then the last one was, what would it look like for both of us to courageously step into healing together? They sound like, I know when we read these exercises, they sound like cute and silly, but I'm telling you, sit down with your wife. So it's Tessa's, follow her on Instagram. It's her September 29th post. I'm telling you, you and your wife, go do these. I do not think it's a fluffy, silly exercise. I think I think it will spark a lot of deep conversation about stuff that I think you thought you were on the same page with and things were clear. And I think you guys are going to find, like, it's really poorly defined. So then again, if it's poorly defined, wouldn't that explain as to why you guys are having a hard time maybe building this thing together? I loved it so much. I thought that was great. Do you want to comment on that post before I ask? I have 3 questions for you that I need you to answer before we get done. But do you want to make any comments?
Yes. So I love the way you said that, poorly defined. Yeah. I think that's where, like, betrayal or not, I think this is where all couples go wrong.
And, disc 2, I think this is why guys slip and relapse. I don't think they have defined their recovery. I think they have a box checking recovery that they stole from books and other people. I don't think they actually know why they did this. And so it's not gone and then it comes back. But anyways, that's a different podcast. So yes, poorly defined.
Yes. And so the vision is your anchor. Yeah. So when you get resentful, wife or husband, whoever, is like, we need to go back to the anchor. And as the couples therapist is holding that anchor for the coupleship. Mm-hmm. And so your therapist should know what your vision of a marriage is, mm-hmm. and should be helping you achieve that. And when you start wandering off, is like, I'm going to bring you back. Mm-hmm. Like, and it goes down to values. And that's why, like, mm-hmm. what you said is poorly defined, is like,
yeah, I love that. Oh, the way you worded that, because here's the thing, guys, like, this is why business partnerships tend to resolve things and handle things better than a lot of relationships, because it's like, hey, this is our mission statement and what we said we were building. you're doing that is inconsistent with our vision. So are we changing our vision? Because this is the first time I've heard of that, right? So it's a very constructive, honest conversation about, hey, we committed to this and it looks like you're changing the rules. That we don't have those conversations in marriage. Why? Because we didn't talk about this. Most people never talked about pornography, maybe in one little sentence, and it was 3 dates in. Of course, the guy's going to lie. But like, that's the thing is, like, we haven't talked about, like, what's your vision of what a dyad is? Like, when I put that finger on, we say I do. What do you see a dyad is? No one told me. Like, I don't know if you listened to the podcast with Jake Porter and I, but like, I had a moment on there where like my mind went blank, and Jake said, women have this unity dyad in their mind of what they're getting into. For me, I just had a kick-ass party, drank some champagne, dance with your friends, and then go to work on, go on your little honeymoon, go to work on Monday, and my life's kind of the same. And whereas I think a lot of these ladies, like, marriage was just a very, very different thing. So I think I loved that post, because it was like, how the hell do you guys know what you're doing and where you're going? And if you are the type of person, her too, betray partner too, like, are you guys the type of people who can even have this relationship, right? And it's something that's worth discussing, because under this betrayal dynamic, the odds are already like just stacked against you. If you guys don't have the clarity, oh my gosh, like, you're making a hard situation worse. So anyway, sorry to interrupt you. I just, it's so freaking true, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. Premarital counseling, you guys, with the CSAT, like, not.
Hey, statistically, you probably engage in some deceptive sexual practice. So let's go to CSAT just to check our boxes. Yeah, exactly. I love that. What did they say? I saw a survey that said it was like 18% of men would fall into the category of like addictive or compulsive, and then 78% of men are hiding something sexually from their partner. 78. So anyways, everybody listening to this, ask your partner, what is that thing that you're not telling me? So I have 3 questions that need to be asked. So the first one is the one that I know every guy is like rooting for me to ask you, like, hey, Roland, you got to bring this up. There is a lot of guys who believe, sorry, betrayed partners, that they don't want to give the one up back, that they don't want to let this go, because they believe if I get over this, then I am saying that it was okay. If he's not suffering and feeling like a piece of shit, he's going to do this to me again. So there's a lot of guys that feel as if they are being held in this one down position for resentment, contempt, control. What would you say to that? Because I don't necessarily disagree. Some of these practices, I'm just like, ugh, this is so unhealthy. How do you respond to a guy who says, hey, I feel like she's keeping me here? How would you respond to that? And what does that do when we're talking about restoration?
Yeah. And so this might surprise you, but I'm like, she may be keeping you there. And what that is safety seeking, safety seeking behavior that gives her a little bit more control. It makes her feel a little bit safe. And a book that describes this extremely well is Michelle May's.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, guys, are you talking about the Betrayal Bind?
Yes.
Yeah, guys, if you guys have not read that book, it needs to be a semi-annual staple. I hate Tessa. I'll be completely honest. I hate reading it now. It brings up oh my gosh, I'm like getting nauseous. Like when I read it now, after my wife and I are so like, to hear it is just I just can't believe that I inflicted such pain on her. So yes, Tessa, everybody, thank you for bringing that up. Guys, if you're not listening to and or reading the Betrayal Bind twice a year, you're missing out on some massive ways to really crawl into the hole with your wife and make her feel hurt.
Yeah, to understand, to get her perspective and to know what she's going through. And what's great about that is what you said earlier, is I could look at another spouse that is really struggling and have empathy. And I struggle to have empathy for my wife. We'll read that book, and it's going to give you a lot of insight of what your wife
is. Sorry guys. It's a tough read, man. It is. I'll be honest. The first 2 times I read it, Tessa, I think I went into like a dorsal state. I couldn't handle what I did. But it is very important to read, because I think you understand I know it looks like she wants to punish you. That is not what she's doing. It is, Michelle calls it pain shopping. She'll call it, there's these safety seeking behaviors that do not create safety. So I want you to answer this. I know what Michelle says, but I want you to answer. So for the partners listening to this, how do they realize that that's not creating safety, and it's actually just like hurting, it's just hurting you and everyone involved? Like it seems like the partner has to come to that conclusion themselves for them to stop changing. I know my wife did. She had to realize that like, this is not creating safety. This is just hurting me and hurting, and by me, I mean her, hurting herself and hurting the marriage. How the heck what do we do there? Because I know as the addict, you can't confront your wife on this. That's not going to go well. So what do we do if you're stuck in that situation?
Yeah, this is her work. Addict can't control it and can't address it. This is a part of her betrayal trauma recovery work that she needs to do. And this will be where individually looking at how am I trying to manage my husband? And how is that truly not serving me? And how that is hurting me more. And that's very individualized of, this it is keeping them in their pain. And it would be really helpful for a therapist to map that out for the betrayed spouse. And so that's why this is a specialty, and you need to have a therapist knowing what they're doing to be able to help a betrayed spouse do that and take responsibility for themselves. And then the hard part is grieving that I don't have control over this. Like this is, and it's scary, and he could hurt me again. And, me wanting him to suffer and for me to inflict shame is not helping. It is just creating more disconnection. And that is something that probably has to be pointed out to the betrayed spouse and to the coupleship itself more than once.
Yeah, sure.
This is something that's worked through over a period of time. But so my answer to your question is she probably is trying to control.
Yeah. And guys, what I would say in response to that, because I know you're hearing this and saying, great, Tessa, fantastic. Well, here's my response to that. Guys, I think we forget how big of an ask this is. I mean, this is to ask your partner who you've cheated on, usually multiple times in a variety of ways, to trust you again, forgive you, carry on, go back to, it's a massive ask. And so I think I have to remind myself of that all the time. Like you're asking her to do something terrifying. And if you gaslit her or relapsed and slipped and hit it, like guys, you just strengthened her case for why she shouldn't get over this. So have some understanding as to why this is so hard for her to let go, because, everything in her body is telling her, no, this is not, this guy is a dangerous individual who doesn't care about me. Right. And so we have to understand that her body is often, telling her things that's really hard for her to silence. I mean, that's one thing I've come to realize. My wife does not agree with what her brain and body is telling her sometimes, even though her actions will follow that. I just need to understand that that's just the side effects of what we've done. That's trauma. That's why we talk about this as a PTSD response that's what this is. All right.
It's not a choice. It's not a choice in any way. And
I know they wouldn't my favorite line, not to go down this rabbit hole, my favorite line always is, she doesn't want to get over it. Guys, she wants to get over this more than you do. She would love to stop comparing herself to other women, to stop imagining you doing things to other women. She would love to forget. Trust me. So 2 more questions, Tessa. Do you have time?
Yep, go for it.
So So next one is, so recovery phase, right? What if we can't exit that? Well, not exit. What if we can't add in the restoration work because there's still a perception of lack of safety? So I know a lot of my guys are saying, hey, I've been in Roland's program, I'm going beast mode on recovery. There's nothing more. Everything the research says to do, I'm doing. I'm deeply connecting with guys. I'm going to intensive, I'm going to 3-4 intensives a year. And she's still saying, I don't feel safe around you. I don't think you're in good recovery. I still can't trust you. How do you respond to that? And I think a lot of the women are probably curious to answer this too, because I think hearing them saying some safety established, how much safety? Because I don't think a lot of these ladies feel very freaking safe. So in that case, what are we going to do? Stay in phase 1 for 5 years? How do you respond to those comments of, you're not in great recovery. I don't feel safe around you. I don't think you've changed that much. Is that phase 1 issue? What do we do with that? Because Tessa, I don't think that goes away even for couples in phase 2. I think they're still getting accused of that from time to time. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like doubting their recovery work goes on for some time.
Yeah. And understandably so, because then we go back into the trauma, right? And so the brain is trying to keep you safe, and it is searching for danger constantly because you are in a trauma response after betrayal. And perception is reality. So if what I'm perceiving is I don't feel safe, then that's my reality. I don't feel safe. 100%. And so it is understanding if the husband is truly doing all the things, right? And let's take an inventory. Are we truly doing all the things, right? And are we doing it to our best ability? And if that is the case, which I'm like, is that always the case? I'm like, I always could find something that we can work on a little bit. So just keep that in mind. Is let's honor their reality.
Yeah, I like that.
You manipulated their reality for how long? And now you want them to see your reality? It's nearly impossible. The brain won't allow it. And so honoring that their perception, even if wrong, no, I'm safe. I'm a safe person. And they're like, no, you're not. That's okay. Be okay with that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tessa. I think I agree with you. I've taken that stance because the more and more I think about it, I think to myself, if my wife cheated on me 22 times and I walked into a fundraising gala and she was all dolled up, looking great. And I walk in, I'm running a little bit late, and she is laughing hysterically at this super attractive, well-dressed guy. I bet you my mind's going to say, here I am 5 minutes late. She can't help herself. And that's not me thinking that. That is everything that she has done to me, making me say, oh, there she is. She's at it again. I bet you she's feeling so validated with him. I bet you, so I've taken that stance as I constantly put myself in her shoes and I say, would you feel any different truly? If that all was done to you, wouldn't your brain have this little, is that flirting? Kind of looks like flirting, right? We can't blame their brain. It's not your wife. It's just, she's just crunching data, man. And you gave her a lot of data to suggest that you're not trustworthy. So I think we need to be realistic. And I agree with you. I've taken that stance. I say I gave her a ton of data that would indicate that I need to have eyes on me, that I can't be trusted. And so I constantly am open to that idea that if I didn't want her to feel that way, I shouldn't have given her a mountain of data, a 14-page disclosure saying I can't be honest in a wide variety of conditions under a lot of circumstances. And so, yeah. All right. Last question. Hardest one. You ready for this?
I want to comment on that one. Do you have time?
I have time. I have all the time in the world. You've entered one of my, I'm like a super fan of Tessa now. So I made sure that I had nothing after this call.
Okay. So if it's helpful for men is to take the trauma to a different trauma. And so if you have experienced, I'm going to use one of my traumas for an example, is my little sister died in a car accident when I was a sophomore in high school, and she was 5 years old, and her mom didn't buckle her into her car seat, and she died. And so even to this day, and I wasn't in the car, I wasn't there, but it was traumatizing. My kids, so we go to this light show in a neighborhood for Christmas, and it has all these Christmas lights. Well, the kids want to get out of their seatbelts, and they want to, we have a sunroof. They want to go up and look out there. And I still have a physical reaction of fear. And it's just and I immediately think of my sister, this could happen. Even though we're going 2 miles per hour. 2 miles per hour. We're all on guard. Kids are out of their seatbelts. And it's I don't know if that will ever go away, honestly. And so if we think about what trauma does.
And why should it though, right? I mean, we're talking about a human life. Why should it go away? I mean, your brain's doing its job.
Exactly. Your brain is their brain is functioning just the way that it should.
Yeah. You're being cheated on, humiliated, lied to, having your choice taken. Because I tell you this, if I would have told my wife, hey, let's get married, I'm going to cheat on you, I don't know, 25 to 35 times, I don't think we would have gone on a second date. And that's basically what I did, because I in all reality, I've had this problem for a long time, and come on, I knew it was unlikely to go away. So her brain was and is doing what it probably should do. I mean, this is the first time I've been a man of integrity in my life, Tessa. This is the first time. So, I mean, her brain's all right, there's a training wheels guy. Let's keep an eye on this sucker. He's talking a big talk, but we'll see. But I am very proud of myself. The decisions I'm making, I'm actually impressed with myself. I had some doubts in recovery. I did. I mean, I had doubts, and I'm so proud of where I've gotten to, and I'm hope that one day her brain can feel that, and I think it will. It's just going to take some time. I gotta get the data. I gotta build the data that says the contrary, right?
Yes, exactly. And I also think if husbands can see that as a blessing for their recovery, man, my wife is going to hold me accountable. She's
I'll tell you right now, Tessa, I don't think if I got caught, I would have ever stopped, and I hate that. Because it's so disgusting, everything that I did. But this had to happen. There's no other way I was going to stop hurting people. Even if she didn't catch me, I'm hurting people. I'm hurting people by even virtual content. I am hurting myself, women, and our society by consuming that content. It is harmful to our existence here. And I'm glad I stopped, because I hate being a menace, and I was a menace. I was not making this place better. I was tearing it down. And so I'm very thankful for that. And I think my wife's coming around to being a little touch thankful. I don't know. It's a lot harder for the betrayed partners to say, I'm grateful this happened, because I'm not sure that's entirely the truth. All right. Last question, hard question. Forgiveness. You mentioned it, so I wrote it down. I've got to ask. Do you think, I have my stance on this, but I'm curious. Do you think forgiveness is necessary for the partnership to flourish? Do you think they have to forgive? I have my stance, but I want you to go first.
So I think we all define forgiveness differently.
Correct, which makes this a hard question to answer, right?
Yeah,
I think some people think it's like bygones are bygones. It's a thing of I don't think about it. I'm completely over it. I have a different definition of forgiveness. I don't think that's what it is. But what's your definition, and do you think it's necessary?
So I think forgiveness is a 2-part process. I think number 1 is the decision to forgive. Is I'm going to choose to forgive this one, forgive this. And then 2 is the process of forgiveness. And I think sometimes that's a daily decision. I may wake up.
I love that. Everybody listen to that. Did you hear what she just said? Forgiveness is a daily decision. I've heard that before, so I can't say that you invented it because I've heard somebody say that before. But I really love that. Everybody listen to that, because I think as what you're asking, what you want for the guys listening to this, I know you guys want forgiveness, but listen to that definition. It's a daily decision. So is it okay to not forgive, to have her not forgive you one day because she's really triggered and activated and having a lot of thoughts that she is not wanting to have? Oh, I love that. Anyways, sorry to cut you off, but I love that answer so much. That's so good.
Yeah. And so I think everyone is different on where they're at in their forgiveness process. Mm-hmm. I think the fact that she hasn't kicked you out and you're not divorced, and maybe she has kicked you out, maybe there is a separation, so sorry for that, but you guys aren't divorced yet. And the fact that she is even working in therapy at all is saying she's choosing to forgive you. Mm-hmm. That's the choice. That's part one. Part two is the process, which is going to be a forever process.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I've heard that is a saying that we have in our groups. We have this exercise that we do. We don't do shares on our meetings. I find I think there's more productive ways to interact together as a group. But one of the things that the guys will often say back is, looks to me like she forgave you because you cheating on somebody 20 plus times in very inhumane ways, and to have them not throw you out of the house and be open to hearing your disclosure, writing you an impact letter, hearing your letter of restitution. Like, I don't know, guys. I don't think there's a lot of couples that even make it to that first therapy appointment. I think I would say most don't. So I know, like, you're like, oh, why can't we get over like guys, you're already probably in a very small select group of her even being open to the idea of moving forward. Yeah, Tessa, my definition of forgiveness. To me, forgiveness, I don't know how I define it, but here's what I always say. I don't think they need to. I'm not looking for my wife to forgive. Personally, what I did is unforgivable is the way I look at it. And so I don't really need her to forgive. It's more so, can we have a marriage, the marriage we want, with this being a part of our story? That's really how I look at it. I don't need her to forgive me. Frankly, I don't need forgiveness. I'm not okay with what I did. I forgive myself tastefully, but not really, because I'm just sad that it happened. I'm sad that I ever did it. I don't need to be forgiven. I'm at peace. I know why it happened. I'm doing the things to keep it from happening again, and I don't need her to forgive me. It's just not something I'm looking for. I just want to make sure she feels safe with me. I want to make sure that this is the marriage that she wants to be in, and that I'm acting like the husband that she wants me to be. And that's all. I don't need her to forgive me, and I don't even need blind trust. I don't need either of those things. I'm okay with having a flourishing marriage without those two, and I think we can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Can a marriage go without forgiveness? I think forgiveness is not for the other person. I think it's for ourselves. Yeah, and sure. So if I have lack of forgiveness for someone, I most likely have bitterness, or it will be bitterness eventually, or resentment, or anger. There's something there if I'm not forgiving. And so I don't believe that forgiveness is for you. I think it's for her heart, so she's not chained towards this pain, and she's allowing herself to be free from that.
Yes, I love it. I agree with the same thing. It's not, let's move on and pretend this never happened, and I'm never going to get triggered again. I'm never going to bring it up again. Because if you think that's where she's going to get, I don't know. I wouldn't keep your hopes up on that one. Tessa, this was so awesome. I already know I'm adding you. I'm going to write a note. I'm already adding you to the rotation, assuming that you want to be a part of the rotation. I cannot imagine that in 6 months I'm not going to have you back for another. You really are. I really admire the thought that you put into this. You've really taken the information and made it your own. And that is our responsibility, I believe, as practitioners. That's why we call it practice. They don't call it a therapy shop or it's a practice, because it's an ever evolving. What am I seeing? What does the research say? And how can I get better each and every day? And I just so believe that you're doing that. And I can't imagine that every single client you've ever worked with doesn't feel the same way. Your heart's in this. And I just love that so much. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.